Let's move on to another demonstration here where we take a look at implementing IPv6 EIGRP. So let's do some implementation of IPv6 here. The diagram I'm using, it's the exact same network as we used for IPv4. As a matter of fact, I have not disabled IPv4 EIGRP. So here what we're going to do is dual stack IPv4 and IPv6 for EIGRP. We're just going to focus on EIGRP though for IPv6 here. So IPv4 EIGRP will be running in the background. We're going to add on the IPv6 version. We're going to start with router A here. I've already configured all of the IPv6 addresses for each of the devices. All we need to do now is go into each device and implement EIGRP. So right now I am connected to my workstation here, and we're going to open up PuTTY and connect to router A. So right now I'm on router A. If I do a show IPv6 interface brief, it's going to show me all my IPv6 addresses here. Right now they are configured on Fast Ethernet 00, Serial 010, and my loopback. So if I go into config mode here, this is going to configure very similarly to the way we did OSPF in IPv6. So first we're going to set our EIGRP router ID in IPv6. To do that, we say IPv6 router EIGRP, and then we have to give it our autonomous system number here. I'm going to use 10, which is the same number I used for IPv4 EIGRP. Then we're going to issue the router ID command here, and this is router A, so I'll give it an ID of 1.1.1.1. Next, I'm going to go turn on EIGRP on each one of my interfaces. So I do not issue network statements like I do for v4. Here I go right into the interface, Fast Ethernet 00, and I say IPv6 EIGRP 10. So that says turn on EIGRP Autonomous System 10 on Fast Ethernet 00. We're going to do the same thing on Serial 010, say IPv6 EIGRP 10. And then on our loopback interface, we do the same command, and that should be it. Let's move over to router B. So router B will connect the rollover cable there and log in. If I do a show IPv6 interface brief, we'll see that I have IP addresses configured on Fast Ethernet 00, 01, and Serial 010, as well as my loopback interface. So let's move into my config mode. We're going to start with IPv6 router EIGRP 10. We're going to give it a router ID of 2.2.2.2. We'll then go into interface, Fast Ethernet 00, IPv6 EIGRP 10, INT F0/1. We're going to issue the same command, INT S010. We're going to issue the same command, and INT loopback 0. We're going to issue the same command there as well. Now, in theory, I should have seen EIGRP build a neighbor relationship over Serial 010, but for some reason it does not look like that happened. So I'm going to do a little bit of troubleshooting here before I move on. How did I know that it did not build a neighbor relationship? Well, I would have had a message pop up on my screen saying that there was a neighbor relationship built, and it does not appear that that was the case. So let's do show IPv6 route first and see what information is here. I do not have any EIGRP routes. If I do show IPv6 EIGRP neighbor, I also do not have any neighbors, and it looks like that process is shut down. Now, I'm not quite sure why EIGRP would be in a shutdown state. Well, since EIGRP is in this shutdown state, we have to go move it to a no shutdown state. So the way we do that is this is a bit unusual for routing protocols. We didn't have to do this in IPv4 at all. Here I can say IPv6 router EIGRP 10, and I'm going to issue the no shutdown command here, just like I would do on an interface. If I exit now and I look at my neighbor relationships, you're probably not going to see anything here because most likely the router A EIGRP process is also shut down. So before I move on here, let me go over to router A, turn on EIGRP here, and make sure that my neighbor relationship is built. Notice what I'm doing here with my troubleshooting is that when I noticed that I did not build a neighbor relationship once I configured EIGRP on my serial 010, I did a little bit of troubleshooting to find out what was going on there. That's when I noticed EIGRP was shut down. So let's go to IPv6 here, EIGRP 10. We have to put a router in there first. There we go. No shutdown. What I should notice now is I should build a neighbor relationship now over serial 10. And here's that message that I got saying, oh, there is my neighbor relationship moving into an up state, and it gives a new adjacency. Now, if I issue show IPv6 EIGRP neighbors, we should see a neighbor there, this time with the device connected to serial 010. So that looks a lot better. Let's move on now and go configure router C. We'll log into router C, and we'll move right into router IPv6, router EIGRP 10, and we will give it a router ID here of 3.3.3.3, and I'm going to issue the no shutdown command right away. Now I'm going to go into fast Ethernet 00. We're going to do IPv6, router EIGRP 10. It's not that, it's this. This is the right command. There's too many variations to get this to work. When we're on the interface to enable EIGRP, the command is IPv6 EIGRP and then the autonomous system number. So we'll do the same thing for fast Ethernet 0/1, IPv6 EIGRP 10. And last, we'll go to our loopback interface, IPv6 EIGRP 10. We did get a neighbor state change there, which is a good sign. That means that things are most likely operating as we expect them to be. Excellent. Let's move on now and go do our layer 3 switch. So now I'm connected to the layer 3 switch. I will tell you ahead of time that I have already enabled the SDM to prefer IPv4 and IPv6. If I do show SDM prefer, we can see here that it is currently set up for both v4 and v6. If you need to know how to do that, I talk about this in the OSPF v3 lab, where we need to enable IPv6 on our layer 3 switch before we can get it to work correctly. Now that is correctly enabled, so what I can do now is just go on to my 3 interfaces here and enable EIGRP. Before I do that, I want to create my router ID. So we say IPv6 router EIGRP 10 router ID. Whoops. Why won't it let me put a router ID in there? We'll have to put a question mark here. Maybe on the switch it configures a little bit differently. And it looks like it does. I have to issue the command EIGRP router ID on this layer 3 switch. And that can happen sometimes. Different devices oftentimes have different commands required to do the same exact function device to device. Here in IPv6 router EIGRP 10, I need to issue the EIGRP router ID command to configure it. On the other routers, it was just IPv6 router EIGRP and then the router ID command. We'll issue the no shutdown command here as well, and then go on to our interfaces. Fast Ethernet 0/1, IPv6 EIGRP 10, INTF 0/2. We'll do the same thing, and INTF 0/3, same command, and that should enable EIGRP on all of our interfaces. Looks like we only got a neighbor relationship built on Fast Ethernet 0/1 and not on Fast Ethernet 0/2. We can troubleshoot that in a moment. Let's take a look at our neighbor relationships first, though. Show IP EIGRP, show IPv6 EIGRP neighbor. And right now, we do only have a neighbor relationship built on F0/1. Well, let's do a show IPv6 interface brief. Maybe I configured one of the addresses incorrectly. If I look at my drawing, Fast Ethernet 0/2 should have an IP address of 2001 DB8 0:0:2. So we'll look at Fast Ethernet 0/2, and that is the address I have configured. Remember, the 0:0 is not going to show up there. So the next thing I would try then is to see if I can ping address 2001 DB8 :3, which is the Fast Ethernet 00 interface of router C. and it looks like I am unable to send that ping. It says no valid source address for destination. Well, let's take a look here. Let's do show IPv6 route, and let's see if we have a route to that network. Now, this should be a directly connected route. So if I do show IPv6 route C, we can see which routes are directly connected. That didn't seem to work. Let's see what we can do here again. Show IPv6 route, and it looks like I cannot just show, oops, there we go, IPv6 route connected. I just had show IPv6 router in there. So my two directly connected networks here are on Fast Ethernet 01 and Fast Ethernet 03. So something is wrong with Fast Ethernet 0/2. And it looks like my cable is disconnected. So let me reconnect my cable here of my router. Part of this troubleshooting has to deal with knowing what to expect when we're configuring this. And when I'm configuring this, I have an expectation that I'm going to build a neighbor relationship on the interfaces pointing to other routers where EIGRP is already configured. Here, when I configured my layer 3 switch, I was unable to get a neighbor relationship with router C right away, which to me was a red flag saying something is wrong. Since I noticed that the cable was unplugged, now I can move forward and now verify that I have proper EIGRP neighbors. When I do the show IPv6 EIGRP neighbor command, now I do have neighbors on both F01 and F02. Let's take a look at the routing table now. Do a show IPv6 route. And we should see routes to all of the networks within our environment. Let's take a look. We should see 4 routes with networks of 2001 DB80 and then something. So let's see if we can find those. Here's one of those routes, 2001 DB804. That is the link between router A and router B. We have the link we learned about from EIGRP here as well, 2001 DB808. That's the link in between router B and router C. Then I have a directly connected route here for 2001 DB8012, and I should have another directly connected route for network 2001 DB800. So those are my 4 networks that are the linking networks. So I should have a route in my routing table as well then for the network directly connected to router B's F0/1 interface. That should be network 2001 DB812:/64. Well, let's take a look. And here we go. We have an EIGRP route for that network, which is exactly what we would expect. We should also have routes to our 3 loopback networks on router A, B, and C. So I should have a loopback network, 2001 DB851. And there is my 2001 DB851 network. I should have one for 5.2, which is on router B. And I should have one for 5.3, which is on router C. So it looks like my IPv6 routing table here is complete for all the networks within my environment.